Welcome. This is the fourth in a series on setting the Greek text, an example use of the Novum Testametum Graece for 1 Thessalonians 2:19 and 3:2. So today we're going to look at 1 Thessalonians 2:19 and 3:2. If you look at 3:2, you will see that there is a replacement of the phrase kai sunatou theou. And the replacement is kai sun ergon. Doesn't include to theou. It could include kai daikon to theou. It can include to kai daikon to theou, kai sun ergon humon, or daikon kai sun ergon to theou, or the actual text you've seen. So what does this tell us? It tells us with these symbols that you can replace kai sun ergon to theou with 5 different choices. So let's look how that works. The base text is kai sun ergon MSA to theou MSG. The first option will go through the 5 options I just worked on, kai sun ergon. The second option is kai daikon to theou. The third option is kai daikon to theou, kai sun ergon humon. The fourth one is daikon kai sun ergon to theou. And the fifth is the original base text. That's what the critical apparatus tells us. So let's look at the definition of the words. Sun ergon, pertaining to working together, helping, helper, fellow worker. Daikon, one who serves as an intermediary and transaction agent, someone who gets something done on behest of a superior assistance. So what does that give us as translations? The base text is and fellow worker of God. Option 1 is fellow worker. Option 2 is servant, assistant, or agent of God. Option 3 is servant of God and our fellow worker. Fourth option is servant and fellow workers of God. My choice would be to be based on Luke's writing as a historical monograph, would be on option 3, or the base text. I sort of like the base text, which is and fellow worker with God, due to its recommendation of Timothy to the Thessalonians. Remember, Paul sending Timothy because he cannot go himself. So our first question is, does the grammar fit? Well, it does. Kai sun ergon to theou, okay, and co-worker with God. Kai sun ergon, MSA fits again. Kai daikon to theou, okay, same MSA, MSG. What about kai daikon to theou, kai sun ergon, humon? Okay, same description of it fits. It's got a little noun phrase. It has a few genitives in there, but it basically fits. And the fourth option, kai daikon kai sun ergon theou. Again, that fits a grammar. So we got a grammar fit. Let's look at the witnesses. Well, if you look at the witnesses, B in the Greek lexicon and the Vulgate, that's the first one. The second one, kai daikon to theou, has witnesses from an early alpha, which is the Greek alpha, aleph, which is, excuse me, the Hebrew aleph, followed by alpha, pi, and phi, and 258. Most of these early ones are Greek witnesses, as you notice here. And later you get to the Vulgate and Basil of Caesarea, which is one of the early bishops who included the information in his sermons. Okay, so that has Greek witnesses. The next one, kai daikon tu theo kai sun ergon humon, has additional witnesses, but some of these are a little later than the alpha. It does have a majority of weak witnesses. You can find this symbol in the beginning introduction in the Novum Testimonium, which I put online, and you have the Vulgate. So let's clear that off and see if we can go through it. So you have in the first one, you have a witness in the Greek text. You have the Vulgate with many of the manuscripts. The second one has more Greek texts. The kai theon to theo has more texts. And it has an early bishop giving us a text as part of a sermon or a writing. The next one has some Greek witnesses, and it says M, a majority of Greek witnesses, and Vulgate, and it has the Syrian. Now, remember, the Syrian definition would be logical because Syria was the province in Rome that this all was in it. So the Syrian language was used. The Daikon Kai Sunergon Tu Theo has some later witnesses, some Greek, and the text has a Greek witness, small letters, but the key part of it has an early writer, Ambrose, there, which is one of the early bishops. So, how do you judge it? You look to see which is in the frequently listed, and you see the alpha would be there. You would have frequently cited witnesses. So we went back to that and we looked at each one. So let's put it. One column we might do in our choices is the grammar fits, but in that column, everybody fits. Now let's look at witnesses. We would then put down a witness and the type and the century. And as you go through this, you put down the type and the witnesses, and you do it for each one, looking up the thing. So the most witnesses are option number 3. The text has the earliest date with Ambrosius from 366. So the Grecian Novum chose based on Ambrosius and the context of the grammar this, because it has the earliest date. As I said, the second option for me would be Diankon tu theo sun ergon humon, which comes from the majority of Greek texts. So we look at it, 2 variants. Current text, it's clean, it's simple with a focus on God's. Grammar, any fits, and it has the earliest witness. The variety, variant 3, expounds on Timothy's qualification. The grammar is equal and it has a majority. I think 3 really fits the historical monograph better, and the grammar is easy and it has early witnesses. But I agree that the earliest witnesses from Ambrosius was a good talk for the UBS. So those are the things you weigh in, and then you look at your translation for your text, and that'll help you set your translation for your exegetical text. Let's look at the insertion of ymας in this point in 3:2. Notice you have an insertion of sunergon and parakalete ymας. Should that be added? Well, that's the next thing we asked. When you look at it, the grammar insertion does, the original has an infinitive purpose with a compound verb. So you have two infinitives. You have the accusative ymας referring to both. For the purpose of, okay, therefore, while enduring longer, thought to left behind, and we sent Timothy, our brother and fellow worker in the gospel, in order to strengthen you and to encourage you. Notice that the implied ymás in the front could be used for both, because the structure, the grammatical structure with esto, as you will recall from your Greek, is really a preposition, but it's a preposition for the infinitive phrase. So esto, the purpose of, for the purpose of, or in order to strengthen you, to make you stand, and to encourage you. Well, the first ymás would be also implied. The grammar insertion breaks the sentences at chi. Let me go back to the grammar insertion. Breaks the sentences at chi and doesn't really strengthen the purpose, because when you put in that extra ymás, it really tends to pull the infinitive away. So you don't really get, it doesn't have as strong a link to the original esto as when you don't have it in there. So in that case, perhaps leaving it without the ymás strengthens the fact that ymás would be linked to both infinitives. So that's the way we judge. You sort of look at the structure, you think through it, and we talk about it. So let's look at ymás. You have in the appendices, when you look it up, you look at the unicircles and the minuscules, and you look at the signs and abbreviations for the majority text. And the original text has very early unicycles. So we found that putting in the grammar is not equal, and we found it. So ymás has the most witnesses, but again, the original text has the earliest versions in hachas in the earliest century. So what are we going to do? Well, the UBS has selected the earliest readings of major text in the 4th century and has concluded the grammar is better. Now see how you would be sitting around a table with all these pieces of papyri information and trying to put together what was actually said. It's a challenge. So let's look how I might summarize it if I was sitting down at the table with over this discussion. I'd say original definitions are equal. The compound infinitive verb really adds to it because it strengthens the purpose, and there are more witnesses in earlier dates. The insertion, the definitions are equal. The grammar has a compound phrase and it's not as clean. The witnesses are less witnesses in later dates, so I would put it behind. Now, that's what I'm going to look for when you write an exegetical paper. I'm going to look, are the definitions equal? Does the grammar fit? And are the witnesses equal or less? So let's go on to the upper in it. Now, if you look at the upper, it's a replacement of the word. So upper is replaced with peri. Is this reasonable? Again, let's go through the same process. The process is, what is the definition? First, upper says on behalf of a marker that an activity or an event in some entity's interest on the behalf or sake of someone, a marker of moving the cause or reason forward for the sake of a marker of general content. Pre is a genitive concerning, and the genitive notes the persons to whom an activity relates. Okay, so on behalf of or concerning. The choice is then on behalf of your faith or concerning your faith. The nuance is due to your faith or an indication of your faith. So in that case, I would say an activity due to your faith. Now, you should look at the text and determine if that's what you think the right text is based on the historical place. The grammar, they're both prepositions. They're both prepositions with a genitive afterwards. The grammar is equal. Okay, so what do we do next? How do we look it up? We look up in the appendices in the Greek unisicles, we look up DKL 365 630 1175 1241, and it indicates a majority. But you also have an early text in Harkness and the earliest Greek appendices in the Alpha in the 4th century. And all these witnesses. So even though there's a majority of Greek texts, the earliest text is before then. So again, how do we look at this? It has the most witnesses, Peri, and Pair has the earliest date. So here we're about lots of witnesses, earliest dates. How do we summarize our findings? Definition. The nuance of historical monography favors the definition of the early upper. The grammar is equal because they're both prepositions, and the witnesses, there are earlier witnesses for the original. So my choice would be no replacement due to the reasoning of the definitions of that lean toward what would be in a historical monograph or a monography and an earlier date. I can't argue on the witness. So how might I post that? So, excuse me, let me go through the final logic. Again, you have Kai, Sun, Ergon, Tua. There are 4 variants. I choose this option 3 because most witnesses approve 3. With ymας, there's no clear change, but the grammar fights against it, and most witnesses insert it, but the earliest witnesses, notice I'm going through definitions, grammar, witnesses. If I have more than 1 or 2 variants, I try to break it down to just 2 that I can choose between, because that helps me write compare and contrast. And usually you'll find that 1 or 2 are either the main text and a secondary are the 2 very best. Try it in your exegetical papers and tell me what you think. If you have problems, glad to chat with you about it. Now, the replacement of upper with peri is equal as far as grammar, but the definition, the upper has a slightly better nuance than peri. So I would vote against it because there are more witnesses for peri, but the earliest witnesses for upper. So how would you work on that? The post, as far as a historical monography for our discussion, might be the following. And you're welcome to take a look. The NA-28 editors rejected the variations to 1 Thessalonians 3:2 to the replacement Kai, Sun, Ergon, Tu, Theo, and that inserted a ymας after parakone and replaced upper with peri. These editors made good choices based on early witnesses and identifying 1 Thessalonians 3:2-19 through 3:13 as his historical monography style. The variants Sun, Ergon, Theo text are, and I list all the variants. The variant 3 has the most external witnesses, and I then conclude that variant 3 has external witnesses and has chosen it. The original text focused on God's action in Timothy's lives, which fit a historical monograph better than variants 3 focused on his co-workers. The NA-28 editors choose the earliest witnesses rather than the most witnesses for the proposed ymás and περί change. The ymás modifies a compound infinitive statement of purpose to 2 simple infinitive statements. This change does not fit Paul's grammatical style. The choice of υπέρ versus περί on behalf focuses on the Thessalonians' fates, which fits Paul's focus in 2:19. Notice I've taken all the data and I've put it together in the post. My references are as follows for the post, and hopefully this will provide you with something useful for your thing. The next set of things we're going to go on, if you have questions and you're in my class, please just send me the questions. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please don't hesitate to drop me a note in the YouTube forum. Thank you again for your time. I will complete this session by providing an example of how to do this with logos. And logos has both the NA-28 and critical apparatus in the same thing, along with if you put together the BDAG, and it allows you to link between these 3, providing a quicker reference. And for those of you going into PhD work, this is probably well worth your investment, because it will speed along your work as you work on your PhD. And as we all know, time and money fight with one another as we study PhDs. Thank you very much for your time.